All right. So again, that's a bone stock run. This car is completely stock. I did 2 pulls, so 460, 465. That's kind of typical. That's why I always do 2 pulls, because just to kind of get an average. You know, usually what that is oil temperature, especially drivetrain temperature. So I let it warm up, idling up to 200 Fahrenheit for a coolant temp, and that was the blue pull. And then the red pull, usually you're getting, once you get some oil temperature in the transmission and the rear end, the parasitic loss of those oils drops a little bit, and sometimes you'll see that, you know, you do a second pull and those were pretty much back to back, you know, about a minute apart. So yeah, then we can just take a look. I always data log, even baselines, I always like to data log. I didn't have any air fuel on this one. Oh, sorry guys. Beeping at me there. So taking a look at our HB Tuner data logger, it's kind of fun sometimes to look at the factory calibration, you know, when you're first getting into tuning, and you kind of want to figure out how the GM engineers, the software engineers, and the calibration engineers are setting these cars up. You kind of get a feel for how they're tuning them, and you know that's how a lot of guys learn. So you can kind of see here timing. So that blue line, that dark blue line, is timing. You can see how they'll give you some timing down low. That's 3,200 RPM. It's about 26 degrees. You can also see, though, again, this is a stock car. This car has 93 octane. And you can see the knock sensors. Just this red line down here is I'm data logging knock. So it's picking up a little bit of knock, and that's kind of typical. A lot of these cars, GM usually run them right up against the factory knock calibration just to kind of hold the timing. This car does look, based on other ones I've tuned, it does look like it's still running on the high octane table. We wouldn't be seeing 26 degrees of timing on the low octane table. You know, GMs have 2 different timing tables that they'll go in between, even extrapolate in between for if you were to run low octane fuel, and the knock sensors, if they pick up enough knock over a certain amount of time, they will revert down to the low octane table, which is quite a bit less in these cars. So, and then we're seeing at the top end there 7,000 RPM. I took this almost right to the stock limiter in these cars is 7,100, but yeah, 26.5 degrees. That's that's about what they run stock, and even after you put a camshaft and headers and stuff on them, that's about where they'll make peak power. It's about 26, 27 degrees on 93 octane. Now, if we run E85, we are not doing that in this car. We're just going to stick with a 93 tune in this car. We'll see the timing curve will be real similar with the aftermarket camshafts. You can see, so right here at 4,800, 5,000. So this light teal line, that is the air mass, so that's kind of representing volumetric efficiency of the engine, you know, where the peak cylinder pressure and peak amount of airflow is coming through the engine. That'll pretty much follow the torque curve. So, you know, we can go back and look at that dyno graph. Looking at it right now, peak torque looks like 4,800. Peak air mass here is just a smidge over 5. You know, it's hitting, yeah, so following it pretty close. That is also in the tune. The calibration will kind of regulate. So that's the second pull. First pull, no knock, didn't pull any timing at all, so a little bit more time. So because the knock sensors weren't picking up anything on the first pull, 27 degrees. You know, this is kind of just arbitrary numbers at this point because it's stock, and yeah, top end 26.5, and because I don't have a wideband plugged in, I usually won't put the wideband in. You can see the fuel trims are adding some fuel. These cars from the factory, if the fuel trims are adding fuel, they will add that amount of fuel to the wide open throttle table in the power enrichment. If they're subtracting fuel, they won't subtract any. They'll run straight off the base PE table in the math curve. So that, because that's adding a little bit of fuel, I would guess this is probably high 11s, low 12s for air fuel. That's if they're not gonna, if the fuel trims end up being 0 on a stock pull, usually right about 12.5, 12.3, something like that. That's usually where they set them. So these LS7s are, because it's a Corvette and it's an LS7, there's a little bit extra. You do enough of this GM tuning, you can see where there was time spent and where there wasn't time spent. The Corvettes usually have a little extra time spent in the calibrations. You can have an LS3 Vet versus the same year LS3 Vet versus an LS3 Camaro, and the calibrations are different. When you compare the two tunes, you'll have different timing curves, you'll have different fueling. Because they'll usually have different sets of guys or girls, engineers on the calibration. So, but yeah, that's you know, a little bit of the data logging there. I know I show this sometimes on my videos, and maybe it's boring to some guys, but some guys might be into it. You can see the map sensor. Something else we look at too, if you look at this kind of fuchsia pink line up here, that's the map sensor. So that's something else we like to look at for intake restriction. So you can see at the top of the pole, we are at 99 kPa. So at zero, you know, at sea level, if everything was calibrated perfectly, at sea level we'd be seeing 100 kPa. So 100 kPa is 14.7 psi of atmospheric pressure. So that map sensor is reading absolute pressure. So as the pole goes on, you can see it, you know, 98, 97, 96, 95. That's a sign that the intake is, there's a restriction in the manifold. We're starting to pull a little bit of a vacuum in the manifold. So because of airspeed, you'll always get a tiny, even if you can have we can put the MSD on it, the big throttle body, a big huge, you know, Haltech 106, or that biggest intake, that intake that they sell, and you'll still get 1 or 2 kPa drop towards the top just because of the airspeed. But this is dropping quite a bit. You can see this is even getting down to 94 kPa, so we're dropping quite a bit. I mean, that's probably a half, you know, would be equivalent to like a half a pound of boost you'd be losing on like a boosted car. So that you can tell, you know, there's gains. That's why there's so much gains to be had on these LS7s, that when we do cold air intakes and you know, intake manifolds and bigger throttle bodies, and that's how these cars go from, you know, that 460, 465 we just saw to 600 and even 650 on the tire. You know, if you do a really nice set of cylinder heads on E85, you can even see that type of power on a stock bottom end with a more aggressive camshaft. This car, we're gonna do our stage 2 cam. That's a, you know, mid 230s at 50,000 lift. That's mid 230s, low 250s on the exhaust. Mid 230s intake. So that's the duration, and the lift ends up being about mid 600, 650. So we spring it, you know, we put springs according, you know, we put our springs that we use PSI springs that can handle that type of lift. Trunnion upgrade. This car is gonna get the cylinder heads pulled and fixed. So these LS7s obviously have a valve issue, and we always recommend fixing the cylinder heads. I know it's definitely an extra cost, but the finish on the valves, what we found is the guides. So the problem with it is that the guides wear, in the cylinder heads, the valve guides wear excessively. And this car being, I know I said 6,000 miles earlier in the video, this car actually has 8,000, 8,300 on it. Even at that mileage, we've pulled these engines apart and we'll see guide wear. We'll see excessive guide wear. And the valves, especially the intake valves, they're titanium and they're made they were outsourced by GM. That company will actually fix the valves. They refinish them, they polish them and refinish the stem for a smoother finish. And that's the reason why, the big reason why the guides wear prematurely, because the valve stems they don't have a smooth enough finish on them, essentially is what it is. And it eats into the guides. So pull the heads, we have the guides replaced, we have the valves fixed. This customer is not going to have the heads ported. Just kind of showing you guys that graph again, but so you can kind of see. He's not going to do head porting. We are going to do MSD manifold, like I said, headers, Haltech intake, probably stick with the stock throttle body. He's not after every last bit of power, but yeah, we should see, when we're done, we're going to see probably 100, 120 more at the rear tires. I hope to see 580 out of it. That'd be pretty nice to see on a pump gas, you know, stock cylinder head type of deal with our cam and an intake manifold. So yeah, just kind of a quick little video on C6 Z06. We, you know, a lot of the videos you see we're doing Camaros, but we definitely do Corvettes too. I mean, they're LS and LT powered, and same type of stuff applies to these cars too. So, and I know I've been talking about some of the other stuff coming down the line. We got some more of these 2650s I keep talking about, but we ran into a little bit of a parts issue. We were sent some wrong parts, so we'll that'll be resolved tomorrow, and we'll get that. I know that green ZL1 in an earlier video, that's going to be on the dyno pretty shortly here, and that's going to be a 2650, and see what kind of power that makes with a 2650 and bolt-ons. So until then, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll talk to you later.